everyone, and welcome to Arctic Spotlight, an ongoing series where we feature partners and trends within the cold storage and walk-in cooler industry. Today, we're excited to have Patrick Gribbin from HTPG joining us to discuss new refrigeration regulations going into effect in 2025 and 2026. Along with him is Arctic's very own VP of Sales, Ben Casey. My name is Michael Frank, and I am the Director of Channel Growth for Arctic Walk-in Coolers. Arctic has been a proud partner with HTPG for many years, and this collaboration is rooted in a shared commitment to compliance, quality, and providing our customers with the latest information regarding important industry changes coming in 2025 and beyond. We'll be answering some of your most pressing questions with an emphasis on the essential themes and the most critical things to know. Our goal is to help you, our customers, not only stay compliant, but also ensure your systems and operations remain at the forefront of efficiency and reliability. Before we get started, Patrick and Ben, please go ahead and just take a quick second to introduce yourselves.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Hi, I'm Patrick Gribbin. I am the Senior Sales Manager for HTPG Refrigeration Equipment. And as Michael said, we've had a long-standing relationship with Arctic, to the point, where it's a vendor collaboration with a very key and important customer. And we're glad to participate in this opportunity to talk about the upcoming regulations that will affect our industry across all parts of our industry.
At Arctic, to talk about something that's not just hitting us and our customers, hitting the whole industry, right? And we want to make sure that with our expertise in cold storage, that we're bringing on the partners that help us with that expertise. So thank you for joining us, and Michael, thanks for setting up the call. We're looking forward to it, and as always, we want to be lifelong learners and be able to share that information with all of our customers. So thank you again.
Patrick, what are the key changes going into effect in January 2025 and January 1, 2026?
The regulations are changing because of the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act of 2020, which is commonly referred to as the acronym AIM, AIM. What AIM did, the government gave the EPA the authority to regulate and address hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs, which you would know as R404A or R507 in the commercial refrigeration business. And what the EPA has done under this regulation, it looks at it from a production phase down of those products. It looks at the consumption of those products moving forward, and it also facilitates the transitions to the new refrigerants that are coming. Again, the refrigerants that we deal with today are hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs, that have affecting a global warming potential. That's what the AIM Act is looking at, is global warming potential. The earlier regulations that we dealt with were looking at the chlorinated refrigerants and the ozone depletion levels. This is the same, at the end of the day, it's the same process, but looking at a different form of the refrigerants.
So it sounds like these are primarily environmental concerns. Can you talk about the old refrigerants and the new refrigerants and how that increases the positive effects on the environment?
So the existing refrigerants, the HFCs, which again are commonly referred to as, you'd know them as the numbers R404 and R507, they have a global warming potential of approximately 1,400. So the AIM Act was put in place to minimize that global warming potential. Now, in order to do that, the chemical manufacturers had to come up with something that didn't include was different than the HFCs. So what they've come up with now is refrigerants that, instead of a global warming potential of 1,400, the new refrigerants, which are going to be referred to as A2Ls, which is a definition for chemicals, will have global warming potential in approximately the 150 to 250 GWP, or global warming potential range. That will be the impact. That's the impact that they're looking to for this regulation, is to lower the global warming potential of any refrigerants that are let off into the atmosphere.
Thank you for that clarification. Just to add to that, this is for commercial refrigeration specifically, right?
This we're going to talk about specifically within the AIM Act. There are two what are called SNAP regulations, significant new alternative products. The SNAP 25 refers or is referencing to air conditioning, the air conditioning industry. That is addressing the same issue. The air conditioning industry was using currently using R410A, which is again an HFC refrigerant. They also fall under the same issue that had a high global warming potential. So they're looking at new refrigerants and things, and their regulation actually goes into effect January 1st, 2025. And the part of the regulation that we're under is SNAP 26. And it's a significant new alternative product. It affects all commercial refrigeration. It does not look at the small reach-in bottle cooler industry or anything else, but it includes anything that is commercial refrigeration, anything that Arctic would supply panels to, and we would supply equipment to use that. So it's anything from a small, walk-in cooler to a large warehouse, anything in between. If it's a refrigerated space, anywhere between a -40 room temperature and a +55-degree room temperature, it's affected in this range. It's affected by this regulation.
So it's safe to say it affects manufacturers and suppliers quite significantly. And Ben, I want to bring you into this conversation as well. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Real quick about that, Patrick, and I'm gonna let you, as the expert, expound on it. But we're getting a lot of questions, Patrick, from our customer base about how is this going to affect me? How does this affect jobs that I had in 24, and then what happens in the first bit of 25 and 26 with these new regulations. So we want to make sure not only that we're informed as a company and that we're in compliance, but we want to be educators to our customer base. So thanks for kind of walking us through what are those requirements, and the transition periods. I think is really important.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So the kind of let's step back one and say, okay, what's the impact on the refrigerants? Okay, well, by doing this, what happens? We're going to need to move away from the HFCs as an industry for new equipment. There is a caveat in the regulation that we'll touch on. I'll touch on a little bit about repair, replace for existing equipment, but for new equipment, this regulation is specifically geared towards that. What that means is the industry is going to have to move away from the HFCs. Now, HFCs are non-flammable, low toxicity chemicals. So there's not been any issues with flammabilities. There's not been any issues with, and it's been around for 30 years. We have to move away from those refrigerants in order to meet compliance with this regulation and go to the A2L refrigerants. Now, the A2L refrigerants in the refrigeration world, commercial refrigeration world, you'll hear of numbers in the 454 series. It'll be a 454A, C, B. But it'll be a 454 series of refrigerants as opposed to the 404 or 507. These new refrigerants are mildly flammable, low toxicity refrigerants, chemicals. Mildly flammable means it will not self-ignite. And the way I kind of get understanding of it is, if you filled up a cup of a water glass full of gasoline and you put a match to it, that entire cup of gasoline would burn, even if you pulled once you ignite it, it keeps burning. If you took that same cup and you filled it up with diesel fuel and you put the match to the diesel fuel would ignite. But if you pull the ignition source away, it goes out. So that's kind of the difference between, a highly flammable product, gasoline, and a mildly flammable product. Again, that's the way I kind of think of it, because when it first comes up, mildly flammable, what does that mean? It means that it has to have an ignition, reason to burn, and then you have to continue to have that product, that ignition there. So by doing that, by making that change, a number of industry standards had to change. The building codes obviously had to change. ASHRAE 20, which is kind of the industry standard for safety and refrigerants and whether you can use flammable and non-flammable products, all of that changed. Obviously, insurance, regulations changed. I mean, this had an impact not only on just the equipment, it had an effect on the entire process, from the standards that we use as an industry to the safety and everything down the process. All of those standards have changed and been adapted and adopted so that we can implement the A2L refrigerants. Again, air conditioning goes into effect next year. Ours goes into effect partially next year, and then really it goes into effect in our world in January of 26. As an industry, as HTPG as a manufacturer, we are designing equipment for use with A2L refrigerants. Now, the equipment that we currently use today cannot be used into the A2Ls. And the way the UL requirements are, you cannot use the equipment that will be designed for A2Ls. You can't use the term backward compatible. It will not be able to be used with current refrigerants. In the past, we've been able to just modify the equipment that we make and be able to use it both forward and backward. This new one, because of the UL regulations and because of the quote unquote flammability of the A2Ls, you're not going to be able to use them forward and backward compatible. They'll be two totally separate pieces of equipment.
Gotcha. That's helpful.
That's helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
Agreed. What does that mean then from a current equipment standpoint in terms of retrofitting for the future? Are there considerations that people need to make for their walk-in and their cold storage setup and system?
So this specifically looks at, new installations. The definition of a new installation under this regulation is obviously a new installation, a ground up, new construction, new panels, new evaporators, new condensing, new everything. But then in the regulation, the reality is there is a tremendous amount of refrigeration equipment out there that is operating, like I say, the 404, the HFC refrigerants that we're using today has been around over 30 years. So there's a tremendous amount of equipment out there that are using these HFC refrigerants. So within the regulation, if the equipment is commissioned after January 1st of 2026, it has to be in compliance with the regulation.
That's something that our customer base really needs to understand and feel confident in exactly what are the requirements by what date. So that's helpful. Thank you, Patrick.
And it's commissioned. It's not installed. It's actually when the piece of equipment makes cold. Now, a year, 18 months ago, EPA came out and said they gave us in the refrigeration industry an extra year. Well, what they did was they changed it from the date of manufacture to the date of commission. It's not a very clean definition, but the date of commissioning, it's the day you start it up. It's not the date that we manufacture. It's not the date that Arctic sells the panels. It's not the date that somebody does the installation. Because if you get to December of 25 and the customer sets up the box, they come in, they put the equipment together, everything's going fine, and all of a sudden a winter storm hits, or they can't get it done before, and they have to go back and start it up January 5th of 2026. In order to be compliant, it has to be equipment designed and be used with A2Ls. So that is a very, very key difference from the date of manufacture. Now,
that's super helpful. Thank you.
The other part of it is we manufacture, the industry has what we call package systems. These are self-contained, completely self-contained condensing unit, evaporator, all in one. And it's basically a plug and play. Those are considered by this regulation a piece of equipment. Those have to be compliant by January 1st of 2025. And that is based on date of manufacture. So anything manufactured prior to January 1st of 2025 can be manufactured with today's refrigerants. And there is a 3-year sell-through on those products. So if Arctic, or if us, HTPG, or anybody has any of these package units in stock that were built prior to January 1st of 2026, they have 2025, you have a 3-year sell-through period on that product. But that's the only part or only piece of equipment in the commercial refrigeration business that has that 3-year sell-through period. Everything else goes to the commissioning date of January 1st of 2026.
That's really helpful, because I think there's been some confusion around like the compliance on timelines and really what the requirements are. So thank you for making that providing clarity there, because I do think there's fear around that, around the unknown. So really kind of understanding those compliance deadlines, but also, what some of those grace periods are is super helpful. And Arctic will continue to help our customer base understand that for sure.
And the other thing that happens is January 1st of 26, because it's the commissioning date. The person that is actually responsible to make sure that the equipment meets the standard is the contractor that is putting it together, because he becomes the manufacturer of the system.
Right.
He's taken our condensing unit, or he's taken a condensing unit and evaporators, or evaporators, and putting them together and starting them up. It's their responsibility to make sure it's in compliance. It's not ours.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Arctic's. It's really not even the customer's. It's that person's. Now, this is why we're having the conversations now and trying to make sure that everybody understands there is a timeline, and we don't, after January 1st of 26, we become a compliant, we become a component supplier. We're not, we make the equipment, but we're really a component supplier. We're not the equipment manufacturer anymore.
Sure.
Which gets really kind of confusing. Um, we have done some fields, field test installations and whatever, and the contractors that have been involved, there really isn't much difference as far as installation or practices or whatever. It's just, understanding the requirements of the A2Ls, but it pipes the same. They can still use braze. They can still do all of these things, for sweat connections and everything else. So there really isn't that much of a difference other than to say the equipment is going to be data tagged differently. There's going to be requirements for, leak detection in the evaporators, which will become standard. There'll be all of that, but as far as the installation of the equipment, there really isn't, much of a difference. And to look at the equipment, you wouldn't really notice without looking at the data tag, you wouldn't notice the difference between, today's unit and tomorrow's unit.
Got it. Makes sense.
What about the cost implications for this? This is a pretty significant move, and I imagine there's conversations, Patrick, you're having internally, and Ben, maybe we're starting to discuss what we need to be aware of from the customer standpoint. Patrick, starting with you industry-wide and maybe more HTPG specific wide, cost implications you can share, just broad notes, and then Ben, same question goes for you. How are we kind of thinking about that in terms of relationship building with current and potentially new customers?
Because of all the component changes or additions or whatever, the industry could be looking at the equipment side, a 10 to 15% increase in the cost of equipment, realistically. But the refrigerants, even though this is an attempt to improve the environment, the refrigerants are actually less efficient than the current refrigerants.
And I think that's where Arctic jumps in with Patrick as a partner. And we appreciate that, where, we're going to be asking questions about, specific job sites, what's happening at those sites, and when we're quoting the jobs. And so we'll continue to work with HTPG and then our own engineers to make sure that we're providing the appropriate refrigeration for our customers. And will that have cost implications? We're going to continue to work to be as efficient as possible. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're providing, the top quality that our customer base has come to know over the past 40 years, that we are going to stay abreast of that, but also make sure that the quality is never compromised. And any kind of cost impact that has, we would be on the forefront of that, communicating that with our customers for sure. So great question, Michael. Thanks for that explanation.
Yeah,
Patrick,
because it's going to be, and I use that number because it's really an unknown, but it's not going to be, I can absolutely tell you, it's not going to be the same price as today's, because it's not going to be the same components as today's,
Right. No, that's helpful. So, thank you.
Speaking of unknowns, are there any concerns about supply chain challenges with some of these new refrigerants?
Early next year, I don't see any real big issues with having components and availability of components or equipment or whatever, which will meet the needs going into 26.
And this is where Arctic really wins with the strong partnerships that we have, that we'll stay abreast of any kind of supply chain issues, and we'll continue to communicate that. But again, it's all about planning, and by working with Patrick and his team over the past several months, and all of our partners, we're making sure that we're staying ahead of that. So again, great question. Looking forward to moving forward. But I think, from an education standpoint, we've done what we needed to do. Patrick and his team have been super helpful. So yeah, appreciate that. It's definitely about understanding where we're at, and then planning and staying abreast of what those regulations and deadlines are. So great question, Michael.
I just have a few more questions, and
Sure.
I want to turn the attention to specifically around certifications for installation, and what installers or anyone along the chain of command, so to speak, should be aware of moving forward? Are there new certifications that are going to be required? Can you speak to that a little bit, just so those kind of adjacent or within the industry can be aware as well?
Sure. Now, one thing to remember is the AIM Act is a federal regulation. And with any federal regulation, that's the minimum. Any state can make changes to or make specific changes to the regulation, as long, and they can be more restrictive than the federal. They can't be any less than the federal. An example would be, the federal speed limit, I think, is 65. You can't have a state come in and say, okay, we're going to allow it to be whatever. It has to be, that's the minimum. So everything we're talking about is on a federal basis. States, California is one, New York is another, they can do whatever they want to do or they feel they need to do to meet their requirements for that specific area, for that specific state or whatever it is. As an overall, there are no requirements for new certifications on a federal level, on a national level. A lot of the states are still working through, what are they going to do? What are they going to, are they going to require new certifications? I don't know. Now, what may come out is on a local level, fire departments may want to have more information about these refrigerants and how much is going to be in a given building and, things like that. But that will be on a state level. To my knowledge, there is no new certifications required from a federal level. As far as training, this is the kind of training that we're going to offer. And we're offering it on, and the industry is offering it on multiple levels because it affects all of us. It affects us as the manufacturer, Arctic as a supplier of equipment, the food service consultants as the definer of, equipment, everything all the way down, through the process, we're offering, in the industry, and it's not just, HTPG, but the industry is offering multiple levels of training to make sure that everybody knows, here's the regulation, this is what the nuances are of it, this is the timing of it, this is what you're going to need to know, what you can or cannot do, all the way through. From an installation standpoint, from a contractor standpoint, there are a few things that it's really going to be going back to proper installation practices. It's not going to be a matter of, they're not going to be able to use, flames anymore, doing the brazing of installation. They're not going to be able to do, use the tools that they've always used for service, installation, and things like that. That really hasn't changed any. So the training is more a matter of, really, this is the new refrigerants, this is the implications, this is when the regulations go into effect, and this is the timing of the whole thing, and what does it mean for you, or what does it really mean for me, depending on who me is. Me as a manufacturer, we have to build new equipment. Arctic as an OEM, or they need to make sure that everything, as Ben had said, they are at the forefront of the knowledge base. And they're informing all of their customers, whether it be the consultants, the engineers, the people that they deal with. And then how do we inform our distribution partners? How do we inform the contractors? How do we inform everybody throughout the entire, chain, because it affects all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think I think it's like a lot of things, right, Patrick? I mean, we want awareness is key, and then like communication, just making sure that we're communicating, whether it's on a specific job or just more, general and global. We want to make sure that we're communicating, more appropriately. And after that, education is enforced and put out in the field. So thank you so much for providing that information.
Sure. And
Yeah.
again, the only way we can do that, the only way we're going to, all of us together are going to go get through this is having these type of conversations and having
Right.
this kind of information. And I'm not the know all, see all, do all, but I can certainly tell you we're, as part of a very large organization, we're owned by an air conditioning company. This is from our beginning to our end. This is
what you do, right?
This has been a huge opportunity for us over the last couple of years.
Right. So. And I think that's a great segue into, Arctic. We want to be a resource, right, for our customers and, concerns, thoughts, education. We want to provide that for all of our customers. So, we're a phone call away, we're an email away, and as the best part is as an industry, we're getting together in early in 2025. You can find Arctic at booth 424. And we want to say, hey, you've got questions, you've got thoughts and concerns, bring them to us. If we don't have them on the tip of our tongue, we're going to get the answer for you. And we'd love to be a resource at NAFM in Atlanta coming up in February, but surely there'll be a lot of questions and thoughts before then. And we want to be a resource, which is why we want to share the partnership that we have with you, Patrick, and your team, that we're there to be that resource, whether on the front end, right in the middle, or on the back end. We want to do everything we can to just take that fear out of it, and we want to make sure that we're educating alongside you. So thank you for helping us with that.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity to have these conversations, because again, I think as a partnership, that's part of the partnership is how do we help our customers, how do we help you, our customers, but how do we as a team help our customers, through these opportunities? Because these, these times, it's, even though it's unclear how it's going to be enforced and all these other things, it's very, very clear of what's going to happen, what needs to happen. So,
and it is happening, whether it
is happening,
whether we agree with it or not, right? Yeah.
I always tell people, we're standing on a train track, and the light at the end of the tunnel is not the sun; it is the train, and it's coming. So we can decide either to stand there and hope that it doesn't get there, but reality
and just be
is,
educated about it, and make sure that we understand
make
what
the
it
choice.
is. So
make the
thanks
choice
again.
That's the best for your business and your decisions and your livelihood.
Yep, absolutely.
If people did have specific questions, where can they follow up? Ben, I'm going to lead with you. Is support@arcticwalkins.com the best place, or would you prefer them to reach out to you directly?
No, support@arcticwalkins.com is great. So is sales@arcticwalkins. Either one of those. We'll be more than happy to get back with you on that, and your local resource, whether it's one of our rep partners or a regional manager or a project leader. We're all going to be able to get the answers that you need, even if we don't have it right then, and we'll get Patrick and his team involved if we need to. But our engineers are on staff are plentiful, and we have gotten ourselves educated, and we're excited about being able to share that. But again, at NAFM booth 424, please come and see Arctic. And if you have additional questions there, that's a fantastic avenue as well, Michael.
Thank you for mentioning NAFM. Patrick, I'm going to give you the final word.
We are here to support. We are here to help everyone through this. If they have any questions specific to the regulation itself, they can go to the EPA.gov, website and go into the climate, HFCs Reduction Act, or type in AIM, Act, and that will give you, I don't know if it'll give you more clarity or more confusion, but that's kind of where the government information is. But again, we truly appreciate our partnership and our relationship with Arctic and their customers. I appreciate this opportunity.
Thanks again, Patrick. That certainly goes both ways.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
appreciate you. Thank you for jumping on, and thank you to everyone watching, and feel free to reach out for more questions.
Thanks again.